The way I read it was that the majority of people interviewed were supportive, but most of them were somewhat supportive as opposed to very supportive. But in the no, they were strongly opposed as opposed to somewhat opposed. So do you put any kind of weight on that when you analyze that? Does the fact that one of them has more strong opinions behind it hold some extra statistical weight?
Full stop. First, Councilmember, I'll validate what you said is actually 100% true, that there is a intensity of opposition versus the intensity of support is very clear. And as far as, the weight I look at the main number. The majority says they support it. But I think there is validity to the idea of looking at the intensity because this will have to go to a ballot, assuming you want to tax. You could bring cannabis and not tax it, presumably, but that would have a pretty big impact and cost to the city. So presumably you're going to, if it was to be proposed and pursued, you'd have to go to the voters, and you'd have to get voter support for a tax. And looking at the intensity numbers is something you'd factor in. We didn't ask the ballot test. We didn't say, shall the city of Agoura Hills approve cannabis and at a 10% tax, or the kind of 75-word ballot label that the city attorney would write. But this is kind of the precursor to that. And so, yeah, I think you definitely look at the intensity numbers and say that that's a factor in what the outcome could look like, because the opposition may be more excited about showing up and voting against it necessarily. That's a possible indicator.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, can I ask one?
Sure.
Quickly? So, Adam, for you, and the answer could be no to this, but besides the small number of unsure, was there anything in this study, as someone who does this professionally, that stood out to you, or was an anomaly, or was it pretty standard?
The only thing I'd say is, as I indicated earlier, your satisfaction levels are quite high. So not necessarily related to cannabis, but just people are generally happy and approve of the job that's being done in the services they're receiving. But other than that, nothing really diving in based on demographics or geography or anything else is quite surprising or kind of worth kind of really noting.
So it's fair to say from your experience, these results, I guess, make sense, or was what you would have expected?
Well, it's the voter's opinion, so of course it makes sense. But no, nothing surprising, nothing that I would point out other than those things.
Okay, thank you.
I have one more
Councilmember Lopez.
Thank you. One more question. Every city is different geographically, demographically, income levels, all of that kind of thing. So I'm not trying to compare Agoura Hills to cities as a whole, but are you doing other surveys on the topic of cannabis, and are you seeing a trend that like this, where more and more of the majority is leaning towards having cannabis sales, or is this? What is your what are your thoughts, kind of in general, on this topic and this survey in context of that topic?
I think we see maybe the best way to describe it is kind of a liberalization approach to things like cannabis. There's just more of an acceptance of it because it's here, and if it's not here, it's in the next city over, and it's legal in California. So I think yes, in general, we're seeing majority support it, be supportive. I was in Grover Beach earlier in the week, and they have cannabis there, and they're in the discussions over the tax, and we're having conversations next week with Escondido. So yeah, everyone's kind of talking about it, and mostly because their neighbors already have it and they're looking to capitalize on it. But in general, yes, there's a majority across most political subdivisions that supports it. Sometimes in a greater percentage, sometimes less, but mostly yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.